Well, good afternoon to those of you who are watching us live or are watching a recording of today's Lunch and Learn. We are pleased to be providing this to you through the Hope and Healing Center and Institute. My name is Seth Stander, and I have the privilege of serving as Community Aging Specialist for HHCI Cares. Our division of the Hope and Healing Center and Institute focuses primarily on caregiving, aging, resilience, ethics, and spirituality, which, if you were following along, fits the acronym for HHCI Cares perfectly. We are thrilled when we have the opportunity to go ahead and to introduce models not only for coping with the rigors of aging, but also models for expanding on the definition of healthy aging. And that is why it is a pleasure to have presenting for us this afternoon, Elizabeth Churaman, who is the director of the Foster Grandparents Program here in Harris County, which happens to be based in the Evelyn Rubenstein Jewish Community Center, or ERJCC, of Houston. Now, prior to joining the ERJCC, Elizabeth served in state and local government, including supporting early childhood literacy for area library systems. I understand that, Elizabeth, you are currently pursuing a Master of Social Work. I hope that is proceeding well for you, and thrilled that you had mentioned in your brief biography that you dream to continue to serve both Houston and Harris County. I am going to go ahead and pass the baton over to you, and we are thrilled to have you talking about the Foster Grandparents Program here in Harris County. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Seth. I really appreciate you taking the time and opportunity for me to highlight this amazing program. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared. It's going to be... Okay. And that should be up and good to go. Can I get a verbal confirmation?
It looks great.
Perfect. Okay. So as we said earlier, I'm the current program director for the Foster Grandparents Program of Harris County. We are housed out of the Evelyn Rubenstein Jewish Community Center, ERJCC. The program has been live in Harris County since 1965. The program does come out of the Older Americans Act. I could not say what administration. Unfortunately, my US history is not as good as it needs to be sometimes. But so the premise of the program is that foster grandparents are role models, mentors, and friends of children who are traditionally what we would believe is at risk. And it's for those aged 55 and older who are looking for a way to give back, stay active, and, really provide that mentorship for at-risk youth here in Harris County. Volunteers are able to share their experiences and just the genuine joy of giving back, especially with children who may not have had the opportunities to cultivate those deep, meaningful adult relationships that aren't necessarily with those who are teachers or parents, just somebody that they can speak with as more of a confidant in a manner of that way. One of three that began in 65, of course. And what we see a lot in our programs is that the senior core programs, we're one of three. There is Senior Companion Services and RSVP as well. And the three programs cater to different facets of giving back. Senior Companions, as the name implies, is for those who are aging in home, and it pairs more mobile seniors with folks in their homes just for that kind of respite from primary caregivers. And RSVP is kind of the same concept, but there is no income qualifications for those volunteers. And Foster Grandparents Program caters specifically to youth. Overview of service. All of our volunteers serve between 20 and 40 hours a week, including schools, hospitals, daycare facilities, and some Head Starts. And that is hours served in station. So you would be in your classroom or in your care facility for those 20 or 40 hours. Prior to that, there is pre-service orientation, which includes training that I actually facilitate for Harris County, training and training as well in the organization that you will be serving. There is a monthly in-service, and that is something that I run, and that's just to bring our volunteers together and regroup. If you're particularly encountering a case that is new to you, or a child has experienced a circumstance that you would care to discuss with other volunteers who may have more experience in the program, or a different experience with the children that they serve, we like to create that space and interaction for our volunteers. During those meetings, we also provide, we like to have some type of I prefer to have a technology training or some type of skills enhancement course, something free to our volunteers that we can provide in terms of education or resources for them. We also provide, supplemental accident liability insurance, because we love safety is number one, especially for, our amazing volunteers who have so much to give back. And with that being said, there is a tax exempt stipend of currently $3.15 an hour, and that is federally regulated. And that, again, to reiterate, tax exempt, so it does not affect any current SSI or income eligible based services that our volunteers may receive. And please tell me if I'm running too fast. I talk pretty quickly.
You're doing great so far. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So we had a community assessment. The last one was in the 2014-2015 range. And at the end of that assessment, the overall arching message was, at the individual level, students who have the ability to cultivate those adult role model relationships and without an authority figure or somebody who displays that power dynamic, they perform better in schools, and they have higher rates of graduation in terms of leaving what we traditionally think of as traditional public school. And to me, that in itself, if you're a numbers person, that is amazing to just see that increase. Even it's so much, the impact and ripple is amazing. And that in itself makes me extremely happy and proud to have such a program that exists, of course. Pardon me. And again, in other studies where there were older adults who were regular fixtures or consistent in interacting with the children in those areas, they displayed improved reading and math scores compared to their peers who did not have those regular fixed hours or interactions with the volunteers. Again, if you're a numbers person, it's there. Just an anecdotal story from one of our volunteers and a student that she was interacting with. Um, I don't know if anybody would care for me to read it out loud, but we hear a lot of this, and mostly via a lot of calls or interactions with their teachers. We do try we I do try to make sure that I have a kind of like a hand on the pulse of a lot of our stations, especially because there is so much that can be done with the program. Um, Not just our volunteers, but we see so much impact in our students. And it is a lot of those verbal stories that we get from teachers and caregivers that our volunteers have made such a difference in their children's lives. And that is so encouraging, not just to hear from my perspective, but all of the grandma and grandpas that we are very honored to have in our program. They just, the way that their faces light up and the amazing impact that we have in their own quality of life and day to day, they're able to have that renewed sense of purpose, that is very important to having a high quality of life. Um, just some more tidbits on how we've affected the Houston metropolitan area. In the last calendar year, the math was very long, but we've served over 35,000 hours in 21 different sites, and that includes early education, daycare, and traditional elementary schools. And the amount of time saved in community resources, over $800,000 in service and provision costs. And that number is based on if the schools or care centers were to hire, train, and have extra teachers or extra caregivers in classrooms. And that's only with 42 volunteers that we currently have in Harris County who meet all of our qualifications and have now been with the program some time. And we've served over 200 children with our mentorship roles. To the good part, how we impact our seniors. Everybody knows, building older adults chronically that live in isolation see very rapid decline. I myself, being very close with all of the older adults in my life, I make a point to make sure that those interactions with them are something that they're able to look forward to and see value in that throughout kind of just having that relationship. So what is amazing is to see the surveyed responses from our volunteers from when they first start the program, kind of their life satisfaction, what they feel they can make an impact with, and then at the end of a specific time frame, that there is improvement in their self-concept, confidence, and overall life satisfaction. And it's amazing to see those differences in such a short period of time. Usually an academic year is how we are surveying those folks. So throughout Harris County, we currently have a partnership with Community and Schools specifically, but a large variety of other organizations who we do partner with and currently serve. Of course, I don't know if everyone can recognize, but the orange logo is Baker Ripley, a local nonprofit organization that does a lot of good work here in the Houston area. Salvation Army, a very recognizable nationwide provider of nonprofit services. I did move a little quickly. Again, my name is Elizabeth Churaman. Oh my goodness, it still says Sarah. I'm so sorry. That is apologies on my part. And But our website currently is up to date at www.erjccchouston.org/foster grandparents. And our current contact information is on there as well. Um, we are while we are a federally funded organization, we do uh, utilize donated funds, time, space, goods, et cetera, for our volunteers, whether that be, bags and stuff, or in kind of monetary donations to the program to keep us going. And I'm going to click out of that because we will have access to this information a little bit later. I did move a little bit quickly. I appreciate everyone's patience. But I can't say enough how much this program, for one, means to me, as somebody who has mostly had older adults in their life, and as somebody who has seen that frontline impact. Again, like I've worked in early literacy before, and seeing the improvement in just children I would see regularly in the public library services with either older adult caregivers or just somebody who may be just interacting with them for the day, whether it be a family member or not. It truly is night and day. And I think it's an amazing way that we see that community impact, as well as we see quality of life improvements in our older adults as well. And I think there is that concept, I think widely, I'm so sorry. There is a concept that as we age, we kind of fade into the background, but that is untrue. There is so much richness to be had, even as you leave the workforce, and as some say, coming into retirement. Retirement doesn't always mean going to a sunny beach and drinking pina coladas under the sun, because that's not everyone's dream. I'm personally a busybody. I don't believe I'll ever retire. I really hope to be able to give back for the rest of my life, because it's what I enjoy doing. And to know that there are opportunities like this for older adults to continue to enrich their lives in a meaningful way is amazing and fantastic.
Well, I very much appreciate both the presentation slides and your taking us through those, but also your own personal perspective on the impact that this program has on you, on the participants, on the recipients of the wisdom of the volunteers. Speaking as someone who is less than 2 years away from graduating into eligibility for your program, I can certainly assure you that there's a whole generational cohort that is not interested in going and living on the beach quite yet, and if they are pivoting towards volunteerism as the next stage of their both personal and professional evolution, that this is certainly a fine way to spend hours of their week. I am curious, as far as you mentioned that there are 42 volunteers currently in Harris County's program. What is on average the tenure of a volunteer who comes to you and finishes training and gets an assignment?
So in terms, and I would say we're a little bit skewed. Most of our volunteers, they have about an average of 5+ years in the program. Our longest volunteer, and we're skewed a little in both directions. We have about 40% are very long-term volunteers, have been 10 years plus, have a lot of, as you could say, skin in the game. And we have post-COVID really had to work on re-engaging audiences to come back to the program. There was a little bit of shrinkage during the kind of pandemic season, a lot more cautious behavior from older adults in terms of getting out into big spaces, lots of kids. And this was prior to vaccinations being available for under 18 for students essentially. And so we're kind of skewed in both directions. So if we were to come to like a median, it'd probably be about 5 to 7 years.
Great.
But our longest volunteer, she is rolling up. I want to say she's rolling up on like 20 years. She's rolling up on 20 years. And our oldest volunteer, she will be 91 this year.
Now, and just to make sure I'm clear, your oldest volunteer is also your longest tenured volunteer?
No,
Okay.
she is not. She is not our longest tenure. She has a lot of years on her. I would actually have to look. I think she's probably around 16
Oh,
or
well, I mean,
17.
that's still very
Yeah.
impressive
Well,
as far as
what's a
tenure.
few years really and truly? But it's very coming into the program as somebody who is very new, right? Myself, not really having interacted much with it before. It's amazing. I think it's absolutely hearing the stories from my volunteers, hearing stories from site supervisors that have been partnered with the foster grandparents program through multiple directors through many years, and hearing just the positive outcomes, and still getting children who have moved through the school system and are now young adults coming back to the program or coming back to the schools, and still seeing some volunteers there. And they're just like, you don't understand how much of an impact you've made on me. And to hear that
Yeah.
5, 10+ years from when they've been through is just completely satisfying. And it gives so much, the joy and light that it sparks in the volunteers is just something I cannot replicate. I don't believe that there is something outside of it that can replicate it.
And, you mentioned something interesting about, just being the beneficiary of all of the different stories that folks
Mhm.
have shared about their experiences. And I'm glad you pointed it out as well, the site supervisors talking about the impact, watching interactions,
Mhm.
observing interactions between seniors and children has had, both on an individual and I would imagine on a system level as well.
Mhm.
So now I'm curious, within the bounds of what you are permitted to share, what's been your favorite story so far, regardless of the source, whether it's a volunteer, a site supervisor, a child, whoever the source may be, if you're comfortable sharing.
Probably my favorite story is we've recently added some sites, and a site supervisor, she previously worked with the foster grandparents program many years ago as a teacher's aide. Was in a classroom where the foster grandparents program was placed, and she was able to see impact in students that she interacted with. And now she has since then progressed in her educational career, and works with a larger program partnership that we hold, and has invited foster grandparents program to a new site and cultivated a new space for us to interact with students there. And she says, having met her, I have never seen someone have such a vivid picture of what it really means, or what she believes it really means to have that deep impact. And it's something that stuck with her for many years, because I had asked her when she had um, been through with the previous foster grandparents program, and it was some time ago, quite some time ago, more time than I had anticipated. And to know that as a young woman, younger than a young woman, um, to now being an adult, she's created space in a place that we would have never been able to have a partnership.
Mhm.
and made way for much more impact. And I think just over the length of time, I think is fantastic. I mean, 10 years plus that she was touched by the interaction of a foster grandparent, and now here we are 10 years later, and she says it still has impacted her enough that she wants to create that impact among others. And I think that that's completely priceless.
I love that, and I appreciate you sharing. And that actually sparked another question in me as well, which is that in many ways the world in which we live sometimes doesn't allow us to go ahead and to maintain the level of contact that we'd like to maintain within generations of our own
Mhm.
families. I'm curious as to how many of your current volunteers have grandchildren or great grandchildren, depending on how
Mhm.
in their 90s. I would hope that maybe great grandchildren are on the horizon.
Mhm.
Are they finding this to be a substitute or an addition to the family relationships they currently maintain?
I would like to say in addition, because I would never want to displace a relationship between someone and their family, of
Sure.
course. Um, but I would like to say that our volunteers are people who are full, and this might sound, a little too close to Valentine's Day, unfortunately, but they're so full of love to give. I really believe that when 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 your bucket or cup runneth over, why not give, and why not give back? Um, as somebody who has almost always had some type of giving role in terms of my working life, why not? I mean, I think I would like to say it is an enhancement or an addition to their own familial relationships, if they're there, of course.
And that turns it over on the other side of the coin, which is I would imagine that you have had folks who, for whatever reason, either just there is the physical absence, perhaps there just was never an opportunity to
Mhm,
be a grandparent
mhm.
in their family system, or distance has created a barrier. I would imagine that there's a few volunteers who fit that bill as well.
Of course, and that's there's definitely folks that fit that criteria, and there are definitely uh, there are definitely those who are able to dedicate more time and effort to their roles based on that. And that's not to say that their contribution is more valued or, but it just means something different to each individual when they're able to, when they do interact with the program. It's again, I understand. I think as people crave those connections, and I think that this is a way to kind of build relationships when it is very difficult to build unique and new relationships outside of kind of your close circle or those that you interact with daily. I believe this is like another avenue to help that along.
And one of the realities of modern life is that as adults, regardless of when adulthood officially is bestowed upon you as a
Mhm.
status, it is proven to be harder to maintain, let alone establish new connections of meaning. And that can be in terms of mentorship, and enhancing the learning experience for children of the range of ages that are covered. But it's also just flat out in terms of friendships. It is harder to make friends as we get older. And in fact, and this is not a desire. I know that my director is one of the people who is on our lunch and learn right now. And one of the titles that we've been mulling whether it's something we bring out for a virtual book club at some point in the year, is a new title that just came out called Platonic, which is actually a socialization guide for people who are having difficulty making friends. So I guess what I'm leading to in the form of a question is, are your volunteers making friends with one another because of the common experiences that they share? Even though each child is unique, I would imagine that there are stories to be shared, experiences and camaraderie to be enjoyed amongst one another, especially since they're gathering for in-services on a regular basis. Now that we're in another stage of the pandemic phase, shall we say?
Yes. Having transitioned, there was a quite extended period of time when we were only having virtual in-services. And having transitioned, we were hybrid in-services mostly last year, and this year we are facing to do more in-person, face-to-face interactions again, not just for, the sake of being able to communicate information much more easily, but to enhance the gathering of our volunteers and sprinkle a little fertilizer on those relationships. You can definitely see the volunteers that have cultivated those very deep friendships through the program, and how much joy it truly brings them, meeting people from walks of life that they would have never interacted with. And through the program, they've been able to cultivate these friendships in older adulthood. And that in it, there is, this is a little kind of tangent, but there is a group of women, and they are our Golden Girls, and they call themselves the Golden Girls. I was not creative enough to bestow the name upon them. But they are our Golden Girls. They would have never met had it not been for the program. They have all been in the program over 10 years each, and they all kind of started around the same time and have cultivated very deep, very clearly long-lasting relationships. And they're women in their 70s, and so they would have met in their 60s. And to meet someone and to develop that deep level of friendship as an older adult, I think it's beautiful. And I would like to say, yes, while they have deep impact on the youth that they serve and the stations that they're with, not only do they impact those that are in service of the program, but they really are able to cultivate those relationships and have a lot of impact on themselves. And they're able to enhance their own lives, maybe in a way that they may not have been expecting, but that's the beauty of it, huh?
Yeah. We're not just talking about, whether it's a few years ago or a couple of decades ago in terms of your longest serving volunteers, taking a leap of faith and jumping into an environment in which you're not sure what you have in common until you begin to open yourselves up to one another. And one bridge to that is, of course, the common experience of shepherding youth. And from there, I would imagine a great deal of storytelling and personal sharing when it comes to the past, both professional and personal, depending on each individual. That soon follows, and it's wonderful to hear that those bonds have continued. Even though I know, like many of us, they were challenged during the period of isolation that we all now are looking back upon and saying, thank goodness we survived that. And now are looking to thrive again as we can go ahead and physically gather with a greater degree of safety. I don't think I asked this before, but I am curious. What are the youngest and oldest in terms of your age range of children who are served in the foster grandparents program?
So we currently are in some, what you would call like an early childhood center. So youngest is around like 2, I want to say. And we are eligible to be in middle and high schools, but unfortunately we are rebuilding those relationships. But I would say around, unfortunately, I will speak of children in their age range or grade. Knowing how old a fourth grader is, unfortunately, is not my expertise, but I want to say that's around 10, 10, so between 2 and 10. Um, and for our own quantitative measures, we do ask age, but it is optional for our own information gathering for the privacy of the children.
Oh, of course.
Mhm.
But as you know, from a developmental standpoint, it sounds like and I realize, of course, there can always be more well-trained, qualified volunteers to serve in any endeavor. But for the volunteers that you have who are returning to activity and historically have been regularly engaged, it sounds like they are actually not just being directly exposed to different developmental ages, they're also working out potentially developmental deficits that have
Mhm.
occurred or contributing to the smoothing out of those deficits by their presence as well as their activities with these children.
Mhm. And that is definitely something that we do focus on with our volunteers in stations. We do try to focus on youth that have shown either slowed progress or uh, larger gaps in deficit in terms of learning. We are seeing an increase in that number of students post pandemic isolation or at home school. Um, so we have a lot of work to do, and we're always looking for folks to get involved, of course. And that is our big goals for this year, just to expand, because they're the kids are there, and I
Yeah.
know that there are tons of people to give back, and it's just finding them, connecting them.
You know, there was one slide in your presentation, which was an anecdote that you gave us the opportunity to read as you were describing. I know that for you, time is short because you have another professional obligation. But in the few minutes that we have left with you, and we very much appreciate all the time you're able to give us today, you're welcome to share your screen again if you'd like, or if you just want to pull up that anecdote. And I believe it had to do with a child and vegetables, among other things. I would love to hear you read that out loud.
Oh,
Not
yeah, of course.
yeah, not just for the sake of just giving proof of concept on yet another level for this valuable program, but I imagine that there'll be some folks who will be listening to this recording and not necessarily always on the
Oh,
screen,
that's very
and
true.
I will compliment you. I know you were concerned about the pace of your delivery, but I have to tell you, you've been terrific in sharing, and I would love to have that story out loud in your voice.
Okay, perfect. So you should be seeing my screen
We
here.
do, yes.
Perfect. So the foster grandparent story. At the beginning of the year, Leslie had difficulty socializing with her classmates and did not want to eat in the classroom. Grandma encouraged Leslie and taught her how to eat different kinds of food, including vegetables. Over time, Leslie began socializing more and showed an interest in completing puzzles and writing her own name. From playing with Grandma, Leslie had learned how to count objects, classify them by colors, shapes, and sizes. And there
I
is a beautiful picture here. This is Grandma Natalia. She is still in the program.
Wonderful. I was about to ask if this was the fruit of the labors of an active volunteer. And
Yes.
and all the levels, I look at this as a text that has so many meta messages underneath it, because on the surface you're talking about encouraging a young child to go ahead and to As the old anecdote goes, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
Mhm.
time. And so a little bit here, starting with different kinds of foods, a little bit there in making her feel bold enough to socialize, to play, to engage in puzzles, which of course are going to go ahead and spur even more cognitive growth.
Mhm.
And the beauty of watching that child emerge from self-imposed isolation, perhaps, and become
Mhm.
a part of a greater whole. That's got to be an incredibly satisfying moment to just be able to say, not only is it happening, but I had a part in helping to make it happen.
Mhm. Truly being able to see the fruits of your labor grow in front of you.
Yeah,
It very amazing to see.
yeah. I so appreciate everything that you have brought to us today. And again, I want to make sure that you've got a pocket of time so that you don't have to immediately teleport from one meeting to another.
Oh, no, you're fine.
But
No, this has been such a pleasure and really any excuse to talk about the program because it is something that I care a lot about and it's, I think, extremely valuable and I believe not widely known enough about. Because truly,
yeah,
most of our volunteers hear about the program through word of mouth. I want to say at least 80 or 90% of our volunteers are referrals from current volunteers.
and
And that's just tracing back the paperwork for
and
me.
that's part of the reason why we plan to add contact information about the foster grandparents program in our CARES resource guide, which
Mhm,
is a living document, which Peggy is responsible for creating and evolving.
mhm,
And when we have the opportunity to add in different components, we know that there are agencies out there that people can turn to, and we fully support, such as Volunteer Houston,
mhm,
as navigated by Interfaith Ministries of Greater Houston, is just one example of ways in which people can see just how many different opportunities to serve are out there. But as you said, very often the best kept secrets that we really don't want to keep secret. It is a word of mouth network until it gains a certain level of momentum, and hopefully
mhm,
we can help contribute to that. I speak from experience on the different end of the spectrum. Prior to coming to the Hope and Healing Center and Institute, I was a long-term care ombudsman, and
mhm,
its advocacy on behalf of residents and their loved ones in long-term care facilities licensed in Texas. And in fact, once people heard about that and heard that it's not just in Texas, it's actually every county and territory in the United States, and that taxpayer dollars pay for it, just as the
mhm,
Older American Act pays for your program. Ultimately, people went, whoa, how did I not know? And the answer is because very often folks on the margins don't get the press they deserve. So we hope that in some way we're amplifying your message live by recording, embedding on our own site and in our own
mhm,
resources how to reach out to you, because we are absolutely seeing people come to us and are facing a crisis of identity
mhm,
after personal and professional milestones are met. Sometimes that can be in the form of family caregiving. And when a loved one who has been cared for passes on, very often accompanying grief is a sense of emptiness, and how to fill it in a way that brings light not only to the person being served, but also to the volunteer themselves. And I hear that loud and clear in your messaging, that it is absolutely a delight for both populations. And I'm grateful that that's going on.
and so beautifully said. And again, I really appreciate taking the time and having me here to communicate the message.
Well, we, as I say, will be happy to amplify that message. And I'll have to discuss with Peggy, when I hit my age of eligibility, what type of arrangements might be made, because I come from a family that values volunteerism as well, and mentoring is a beautiful thing to do, especially for our young. So we want to thank you for, again, the time you've been able to spend with us, the work that you continue to do, and we will do our best to amplify not just knowledge of your existence, but also how successful and how transformational it is for everyone involved.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And we want to thank, by extension, those of you who have been listening in today, and those of you who are listening to this recording at a time of your choosing. And we hope that it motivates you. We will be passing along the slides, which includes how to reach out if you are interested in volunteering for this program or otherwise supporting it through means and in-kind donation, as you mentioned earlier. Those are welcome, and we would certainly support anyone's efforts indirectly to keep your program flowing freely. And we want to thank everyone for spending time with us during this lunch hour. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Elizabeth, good luck with your next meeting, and we are grateful to have had you here today.
Thank you. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and I hope everyone is safe on the roads if you have to be for the rest of your day.
Oh, absolutely. You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.